Hello and welcome to this very special Spears Wealth Insight Forum 2020 session. My name is Alec Marsh and today I'm in conversation with Nestor Alfred, the CEO of the St Lucia Citizenship-by-Investment Unit. The title of today's session is Exploring the World's Most Viable Passport from St Lucia Citizenship-by-Investment Unit. And I can think of no one better to discuss this with than Nestor himself, who joins us from Castries, the capital of St Lucia, right now. Hello, Nestor. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, good morning, Alec, and it's really a pleasure to join you and to spend the next few minutes discussing about St Lucia's program and to be part of the Spears Wealth Insight Forum 2020.
Thank you, Nestor. It's a privilege and pleasure to have you here. And if I may turn to our first question, and it's really this, that from Austria to Cyprus, from Dominica to Vanuatu, many countries have citizenship by investment programs. And so I think what the forum would like to know is what sets the St Lucia Citizenship by Investment Program apart?
Well, thank you very much for this question, Alec. In fact, it's one of those questions, I must admit to you, that in my initial appointment as CEO of this program, I had a great struggle trying to respond to this question. Because in responding to these questions, I always spoke about our beautiful sunshine, our climate, our beautiful beaches, and our warm people. But then, after a period of time, I kind of pulled myself away and really tried to understand what makes us different. And Alec, I think it stems from the core principle that there are persons out there who have trusted us and who have gone a bit further in making what I consider to be a significant investment in this program and to acquire St Lucia citizenship. And therefore, I believe we have an owner's responsibility to ensure that the return on that investment is made. And what do I mean by this? I think we have to ensure that we undertake rigorous due diligence. We have to ensure that we know exactly who those individuals are. And at the same time, we are maintaining the integrity of the passport so that when those persons use those passports to the 146 countries in which we have visa-free status, there can be absolutely no problems in the use of the passport. Further to this, Alec, it is so important that the countries in which we have had those visa-free status with, they too need to be very comfortable that St Lucia has undertaken all the necessary due diligence process in allowing those persons to be granted citizenship. So essentially, Alec, I think what differentiates us is the level of governance, it's the level of transparency, is a strong due diligence process that we undertake in regard to the grant of citizenship to our many applicants.
Okay, so your message then is that the St Lucian passport, which is good for visa-free access to 144 countries today, your message is that you'll still be good for that in 10 or 20 years' time.
Essentially, that's what it is, Alex. And actually, it's 146 countries. And the thing is, Alec, the viability of this program is so paramount. And for St Lucia, there's no other way that we know how to maintain the viability of this program other than ensuring that we undertake a great level of due diligence. And more importantly, that there's really great governance over the entire process and transparency over the entire process from the start to the end of the grant of citizenship.
So, I mean, it's an interesting sort of pitch that you put forward. So, and it begs the question: do you think that that passports offered by other jurisdictions are likely to be coming under pressure, or might become less useful for UHNWs seeking global mobility?
By making this statement, I'm hoping that my statement does not necessarily convey this, but I do believe in this open market. There are persons who are looking for different things. There are persons whose focus may be essentially on price. There are persons whose focus may be on entirely areas beyond just price. But if one is looking for a full level of integrity, a full level of transparency, and to ensure that they have those passports and others have those passports, they can feel very comfortable that tremendous due diligence has been undertaken on those passports. So the point I'm raising here is that it does not entirely put pressure on the other islands, but it clearly at least sets a mark for us, a differentiation, a platform for us in regard to our grant of citizenship and the issuance of our passports.
Okay, that's interesting. So, out of interest, how many people who take advantage of the citizenship by investment scheme that you offer, how many of them actually ever visit or come to live in St Lucia?
You know, if one understands the rationale for someone applying for citizenship under these programs, especially the Caribbean, it's not necessarily for those persons to come to this country and live, but it is to be able or be afforded that international mobility that those passports give them. And therefore, those persons maybe just about, if I can say for the 5 years that we've been in operation, maybe just under 5% of those persons actually come back to establish business and to play a role in economic development beyond that of making the investment for the grant of the citizenship.
Okay, so if I were to be one of those 5% who do want to come and live in St Lucia or retire there or set up a business there, what is the offer of CIP for those people?
Well, again, I think we should start off by the whole concept of ease of doing business in St Lucia. And under the World Bank rankings, St Lucia has been placed number 2 as ease of doing business within the Caribbean and America. So when it comes to ease of doing business, I think St Lucia scores way up there in regard to that ease. Secondly, St Lucia has a very simple taxation system. The taxation system is similar to the Kingdom, where it is tiered, and there are all kinds of allowances that can be applied to individuals. In regard to corporations, there's a write-off that can be applied in regard to your losses over a period of time. The tax system is very simple. For corporate tax is 30%. And of course, what we now have is what is called a territorial tax system. So therefore, you're only taxed on the income that is earned in St. Lucia. Further to this, St. Lucia has been very in a stand that would allow for the incorporation of head offices. So when one brings the head office in St. Lucia and one employs 10 or more employees, and those employees don't necessarily need to be St. Louis, each of those employees will be tax exempt from the income. Secondly, the head office or headquarters is able to bring on board all of the necessary equipment and facilities that they need into St. Lucia without the application of any custom duties. So these are some of the amazing features that those persons may want to come to St. Lucia and to undertake business in St. Lucia. Further to this, St. Lucia has a very expansive fiscal policy in regard to tax holidays, in regard to import duties being waived for all of those persons who may have an interest in establishing business in St. Lucia.
Okay, thanks very much. So we've obviously talked about the benefits to those who are taking advantage of the scheme. I'm interested to know, in addition to attracting business people to the island, a little bit about what the revenue from the Citizenship by Investment Scheme does for St. Lucia, because that's obviously part of the story. This is an important revenue raising opportunity for St. Lucia. What do we know where the money goes?
Well, sure, I know where the money goes. So look, I'll speak about prior to now, when the unit collected those funds went directly into the government's consolidated funds, which meant it became part and parcel of government revenue.
Just a second.
And therefore,
Nestor,
all expenditures.
Oh, Nestor, you'd frozen, but I think you have come back. I think Okay, so if I could ask you, sorry, that question again, because I couldn't hear very well. You'd frozen on the system. To say a little bit about what what the revenue does for St Lucia.
Great. So prior to now, and I'll speak about now, prior to now, all revenues collected on behalf of the solution would have got what is called the Government Consolidated Fund. And all expenditure applied to that consolidated fund or the revenue component of the consolidated fund. So some of those monies that were collected by this went into whether it is the hospital, whether it's agriculture diversification, but the government decided to make this a little more transparent. So rather than the monies being caught up in the government's consolidated fund, the government introduced legislation in 2019, which saw the establishment of what is called a National Economic Fund. However, that fund didn't come into operations up until now, which means that there's now a board of directors that has been established, and the board of directors are essentially the technocrats, the executive technocrats within the Ministry of Finance and private sector. And the legislation highlights specific areas in which those monies can be spent. Infrastructure, social aspects, debt reduction. So what it does is that now one can clearly identify exactly where those funds are going, because there'll now be a reporting by the board in respect to the allocation of those monies and the monies collected. But what I can safely say, over the past 5 years, we've made a contribution of 131 approximately $1 million to the government of St. Lucia.
In terms of the significance in terms of government spending, I mean, that's obviously a very small amount within the wider government spending, but it's significant nonetheless.
I think the CIP's revenue is now becoming a significant contributor. It's not as significant as the revenue from taxes or from customs, but I think it is actually, so if I can go back in 2019, the revenues from CIP was so instrumental in allowing government to have a much lower deficit than it would have had if CIP's contribution was not there.
Okay, that's really good. Fine. If we can turn to the scheme now, would you are you happy to say a little bit about how it works? If I'm a UHNW from the Middle East or somewhere else looking for citizenship in St Lucia, what could you take us quickly through the process for applying and obtaining a passport? And
okay, great. So let me just make one correction. I don't like the program being referred to as a scheme. It is really a program.
Yeah.
It's a program that has been generated that has been established by the government to generate the kind of foreign direct investment for the development of this country.
Yeah.
So if there is someone who is looking into becoming a citizen of St. Lucia, the process by itself is very straightforward. That person can either get in contact with what is called an international promoter. And those persons are those who are out there in Dubai, in India, wherever they are in the world, but they've been licensed by us, and there's certain codes of conduct that must be established by those persons. And they're right here in St. Lucia, we have what is called licensed authorized agents. So those service providers are the ones that the potential applicants would have to go to. And of course, in that process, there'll be a simple application form that this person needs to complete, accompanied with supporting documentation. And the rationale behind the supporting documentation and the kind of questions that we ask is simply to have an appreciation of knowing who this person is. Because the truth is, we don't get into contact with our applicants. We get to know them through the information they provide to us. When that information is provided to us, it is uploaded on what is called our electronic platform or portal. When that is done, we have a review, we have a verification team that goes through the application. If there are any outstanding matters, they will refer that matters to the service providers and hopefully get a response on the questions raised. If all is complete, the application becomes compliant. And then the application moves to the next stage where due diligence is undertaken on the applicant. What I mean by due diligence is that we hire a third-party due diligence firm, whether it's SRM or Exeger, one of those international firms, that would go out there and determine who this individual is. They would determine the authenticity of the documentation that were provided by those applicants. And then, more importantly, I refer to them as foot soldiers. So they would go out there, knock on doors, meet potential colleagues of those applicants, and try to determine and create a picture around this person so that we can have a better appreciation as to who we are dealing with. Yep. But it doesn't stop there. We also use our local law enforcement, who then contact our border police in trying to understand whether those persons are persons of any interest to any countries around the world, or if those persons are any interest in respect to being money launderers, terrorist financiers, whatever the case may be. All that information is assembled together, and then the unit makes a decision, a recommendation, as to whether citizenship should be granted to this person or not. And that information, together with a report, is then sent to the board of directors. So there is a level of transparency here. So the unit undertakes the process, makes a recommendation, but who makes the final decision would be the board of directors, which consists of a group of independent persons outside of the unit.
Okay, okay. And how long does this process take in general?
In general, this process takes somewhere, we would say, 90 days. But thus far, on an average, we've seen our application process going through a 56 days cycle.
Okay, and notwithstanding the fact that you make it clear that you apply appropriate levels of due diligence, may I ask what the rejection rate is for people in the scheme? Presumably, many people are put off because they know you're going to do thorough testing. But what is it? Do you have a rejection rate or?
But Alec, it's interesting. I think because persons have known that St. Lucia places a tremendous focus on due diligence, for those who may have any skeleton in their cupboard, may not necessarily want to apply to St. Lucia. And therefore, our rejection rate is very minimal, less than 1%.
Okay, well, look, I'll just turn to my last question then. I mean, we've talked about the process a little bit. We talked about your USP as a provider and your commitment to, protecting this return on investment that people are making if they come to you. I suppose there are many jurisdictions offering passports. Before we turn to questions from the forum, may I ask you to just encapsulate once again what it is about the St. Lucia scheme from your perspective that makes it the most desirable one for UHNWs sitting in the Middle East or Greater China or elsewhere that might be looking for a different citizenship option.
Okay, so what makes this program different, again, is that St. Lucia ensures that it maintains that return on investment that has been made by those applicants. We believe that investment is significant enough. And we also believe that we have a responsibility to ensure that when those passports are issued to those citizens, that they can be comfortable in knowing that those passports can be utilized for years to come. And therefore, what differentiates St. Lucia from all of the programs is the fact that we focus tremendously on protecting the investments of those citizens and ensuring that the passports that are issued is of the highest integrity.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, look, I think it might be a good moment now to turn to the forum and any questions that are waiting for us there. So to those who are tuning in, this brings us to the end of the pre-recorded discussion. Thank you very much to Nestor Alfred, the CEO of St Lucia Citizenship-by-Investment Unit. Thank you very much for joining us from Castries. If you listeners and viewers, if you now, I invite you to close down this session and then open the next session which appears. And if you do so in the auditorium and play that, you'll be able to take part in a live audio Q&A with Nestor, who will be available to answer your questions about the St Lucian scheme and its interesting and compelling USP. Many thanks and see you again online. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you very much, Alec.